Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. New week, new theme. We're going to be looking at the genre of post-hardcore this week, checking out songs, bands, albums, whatever that falls under that genre. This is a genre I think I know things about, which I'm sure is going to get proven wrong this week as it typically does. So we're going to be checking out the band Fugazi today. The track we're looking at is Blueprint. Let's see what they're bringing. I feel like I just got tricked, but not intentionally, maybe. This did not sound like anything I was expecting. And I'm curious if this is like metalcore week, where I got a bunch of stuff that I didn't think was metalcore because there's a divide in era. What happened with metalcore week is we got a lot of early metalcore, the stuff that crafted and cemented the foundations of the genre, not so much the metalcore that came after it hit mainstream popularity and took on a different vibe. Retained the same name, of course. There are people who differentiated it by calling it metallic or melodic metalcore or something like that. I don't remember. There was a small differentiation, but they're both under the metalcore umbrella. And I wonder if that's what's happening here, where my understanding of post hardcore is primarily what came after mainstream acceptance and the popularization and softening up of the genre more so than its inception. You guys as a community are very big on giving me the origins, and I am very appreciative of that. Um, I get to see where some of this stuff started, which is very cool, but it's not always what I'm expecting because I rarely came into anything at its inception. If any music came to my ears, it was at its peak, not when it was still an underground movement. So to listen to this and hear not much different than something Smashing Pumpkins would create, more so than heavier genre or heavier styles that I more associate with the genre, very much of a surprise, though it could also just be as usual. I don't have a strong understanding of genre to begin with, and maybe I misheard the term post hardcore and applied it to bands and sounds that it technically doesn't cover, but I've kept that association through the years because no one's ever corrected me. I haven't really had people who are knowledgeable enough about genre to say, dude, stop calling it that, it's not. Regardless, let's get into what Fugazi is doing here. Over 50% of the track is one chord progression. We have some minor variation on how it's played. We introduce chords at one point, but the opening 2 minutes is one single progression that completely loops in upon itself. There is no strong resolution to it. It could go on forever and never feel like it's ever reaching a point that feels final. We pair this with the vocals, which repeat the same thing over and over and over. Something about playing, not playing, I don't know. There is a part that comes, I think it's after the moment where we move from the isolated notes to chords, where we do have different lyrics that go on top of it, but I mean, just this idea of repetition is very much baked into the track itself, especially this opening moment. After this, we move into we I don't know if we overdrive the guitars, maybe we just add a little bit of crunch. I don't know what's going on there. It's a slightly more aggressive tone, but we take this idea of repetition to the max, and our guitars sit on one chord for the next 30 or 40 seconds. It is kind of wild. I think again our vocals resort to a repetitive line, if I remember correctly. And then we wrap the track up with a small riff. At least it is a riff, it isn't just a single line, and the vocals are definitely doing something repetitive at this point. I think it's interesting that this album is called Repeater and 3 songs. There is a track called Repeater on this. Yeah, but there are definitely more than 3 songs on here. But the idea of the album called Repeater and this track just being full of repetition is a parallel I can't ignore. I'm curious if this is just their style or what. But I found myself bored at several parts of the track, which, I mean, that is not something I thought I'd say of post hardcore. So, again, either I don't know what I'm talking about or this is a different kind of post hardcore. But there's just a lot of repetition in here, and it's paired with a bored sound. What I mean by that is there is no energy from the production. It feels underproduced, if anything. Our guitars are just kind of there. The bass is large. It's actually maybe a bit too large in cases. It overshadows the guitar at points, but it doesn't really have oomph to it. It just kind of the bass playing. The drums are withheld, and we'll touch on the vocals in a second. But musically, there's not a lot going on. And sonically, the production of it all is missing that punch. It's missing that electricity. It feels like a song that simply just exists. I mentioned we bring the vocals up later, and now's a good time. The vocals run counter to everything. Kind of. They're very repetitive at times. They lean right into that, but they are dynamic in a way that the band is not. The vocals are eclectic, I think would be the best term, the nicest term to use there. There's no. Let me rephrase that. It's a carefree type of vocal delivery where it's not so much about singing something properly or nicely or even in pitch at times, but about expressing how the vocalist feels at that moment. There's so many micro adjustments as far as even just mouth shape, and that's just what I'm hearing. I would love to see this performance to see what the vocalist is doing and how they're creating these tones and sounds. At some points, it feels like it's a very tight, small mouth shape that would create a very directed tone, and other times we get these very wide mouth shapes, and sometimes it feels like we hold a note out and widen and compress the shape as well. It's just very interesting. Some note series are very direct with staccato notes where each hit is its own, and others slide between the tones like they're I don't. It's just slurring between the notes. It's you never know exactly what the next vocal line is going to be, even in the repeated contents. We look at the opening section about not playing or something like that, and each grouping of said where I think it's like three repeated lines, four repeated lines. We can look at those as stanzas. Each repetition of this phrase, though, of the stanza, is delivered differently between volume and vocal placement and mouth shape and styles. It's just it's a very dynamic, expressive style. It didn't necessarily work for me. It feels a bit goofy at times. Like I said, it's very carefree. I think eclectic is a strong word for it. But I have to appreciate the variety there. That despite the mundanity and repetition found throughout the music, the vocals find a way to highlight themselves and still have fun. It is kind of dreary in its lack of energy. It's not melancholic, but it also doesn't feel empowered. It doesn't feel joyful. But the vocals still find a way to bring a bit of energy to it all. And honestly, that might be everything I have to say about it. It's a short track with three ideas, and of those three ideas, two are heavily repeated upon. I think the final moment was actually starting to get a bit interesting. We found a bit of groove, we found some rhythmic diversity between the vocal line, and the guitar line. It actually started to do something interesting, but it was doing this interesting stuff in a highly repetitive moment. So while I began to get into it, into the first few repetitions, 20% of the way into this section, I was ready to move on again. So I don't know. Not my cup of tea. Also, does anybody else hear the Smashing Pumpkins thing? Like I said that it reminds me of a Smashing Pumpkins track. I don't know why. I can't really pinpoint anything. I'm not a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. I've listened to like two or three tracks, maybe tops, in my lifetime, two of them being radio hits. But this sounds very much inspired by that, or it hits a lot of points that make my brain reference Smashing Pumpkins. I don't know. Is Smashing Pumpkins post-hardcore? I have so many questions at this point. Let's hit the lyrics and wrap this up. I mentioned there's a lot of repetition. We have three repetitions of I'm not playing with you, I'm not playing with you, I'm not playing with you, yeah, you. We say that two more times. On the fourth time through, we do the I'm not playing with you again three times, but then we, instead of saying yeah, you, we end it with I clean forgot how to play. There is so much emphasis here that, dude, I'm not playing with you. Now, I don't know how to take this. I kind of want to take it into a more direct reading of it. I'm not going to participate in some sort of game or even exist within your life, have a relationship, a friendship, any of that. Like a direct, meaningful interaction with you. And at the last moment, he flips the switch, and instead of it feeling directed at you, I'm not doing this with you, he flips it and makes it internal. I forgot how to play. I'm not playing with you because I don't know how. There seems to be a very directed incident here that maybe I would play with someone else, but not you in particular. But the very last line almost feels like I would love to, but I don't know how. It's almost a shortcoming of the narrator and a shifting of blame of that shortcoming until the final moment when we bring the blame back to the self. But you can still come around. In fact, I invite you down. Maybe together we can wipe that smile off your face, because what a difference a little difference would make. Okay, now see, this feels a bit more aggressive again. You can come around, I'll even invite you over, but it's going to be for a fist fight. So, I mean, that kind of defeats my reading of the opening section. We'll draw a blueprint. It must be easy. It's just a matter of knowing when to say no or yes. Oh. Yeah, when you break it down like that, anybody can blueprint anything. Let me go blueprint a skyscraper. I'll just figure out when I should say yes and no to individual lines. And maybe that's the point of that. It's the subversion of it. Technically, drawing a blueprint is just knowing when to do things and when not to do things, but it's also a lot more than that. And that subversion of the idea is uh, much easier said than done, I think, is what they're going for there. The old idiom. Frustrating, always waiting for the bigger axe to fall. A patient game I can't find my way to play. Find my way to play not knowing. So not knowing when the axe falls. Then we go to our final section full of repetition here. It is the same line over and over, or the same phrase over and over again. Never mind what's been selling, it's what you're buying and receiving undefiled. And then we finish it out with never mind, never mind, never mind, not knowing the way to play, over and over and over again. Yeah, I've got nothing here. There's definitely some animosity between this person, our narrator, and another person, and it's being explored in a variety of different ways. But I don't know. The repetition is a huge key, I think, but I can't tie that into any of the themes either, musically or lyrically. I don't know. I've just got a lot of questions here. It's an interesting song, but not one I'm likely to come back to. It doesn't sell Fugazi on me at all. Um, I'm going to guess that since this was selected other than any other track on the album, that this is rather indicative of them. It's a good first step into their style or into their works. Doesn't really sell me on the band though, which is not always the point of musical suggestions. But it is, I was really hoping that this would be a week, 5 bands I can add that I want to check out in the future. So nobody knew that. It's not like I said, "Hey, give me bands and post-hardcore. I love this genre. I'm looking for some new stuff." It was sort of what do they call that? A goal that no one knows about. Why can't I think of what that phrase is? Anyways, um yeah, it's just those are my thoughts. More importantly than most days. Actually, it's always important, but I just have a lot of questions today that I would like answered. Hit me up in the comments and educate me. Let me know what's going on here. Is this post-hardcore? Is this Why is this different than what I think post-hardcore is, which is heavier and more energetic and groovier and catchier and has different vocal styles. Usually more of a mix between pop rock and like fry screams and like a mix of those. Is that post-hardcore? Why does this remind me of Smashing Pumpkins? Does anybody else find this to be so boring, for a lack of a better word, because of all the repetition? What do these lyrics mean? Why is there so much repetition? Just forgot the always repeat themselves constantly. This song exists, but I don't understand it. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box, and there's a link for Linktree. Takes you to this menu right here, has links for everything related to the channel. You can find stuff in there. There's ways to support the channel. You can find the link to Discord. You can email me. There's a ton of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. There they are. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.